Thank you, and good morning, Speaker. My question is for the Premier. A backroom deal struck by the board of Hydro One raised the CEO's severance to $10 million if there was a change in control of the company. As the largest shareholder, Speaker, I asked the Premier, when did the Premier and the Minister of Energy know of this deal?
Thank you, Premier. Minister of Energy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Once again, we recognize that executive salaries are high compared to the vast majority of Ontario salaries, Mr. Speaker, and we remain committed to Hydro's One regulation and their accountability, Mr. Speaker, through our government's involvement as a majority stakeholder and shareholder, Mr. Speaker. That said, Hydro One is now a publicly traded company, not a government entity, and Hydro One's rates continue to be set by the Ontario Energy Board, and the board is the energy sector's independent regulator with a mandate to protect the province's electricity consumers, and it continues to deliver on its mandate, Mr. Speaker. For instance, last fall, the Ontario Energy Board capped the portion of executive compensation at Hydro One. For electricity customers, they're required to fund 10% of base salaries, saving ratepayers $30 million over this year and the next. Completely eliminating the CEO's salary, Mr. Speaker, wouldn't even take pennies off of anyone's bills, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Supplementary.
Back to the Premier. A backroom deal struck by the board of Hydro One jacked up the CEO's severance to $10 million if there was a change in control of the company. Speaker, as the largest shareholder, did the Premier or the Minister of Energy sign off on this backroom deal?
Thank you. Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, decisions made regarding executive compensation are made by the board of Hydro One. You know, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to the article that is being quoted, Mr. Speaker, let's see what else that Globe and Mail article said, Mr. Speaker. The article said the government cut hydro bills by 25%, Mr. Speaker. That's something that they voted against and have no plan on how to actually reduce rates, Mr. Speaker. Similar reductions were made for small businesses and farms, 500,000 of those businesses to be, a matter of fact, Mr. Speaker, and in rural areas, a number of fees were cancelled and bills were lowered even further. In many areas, between 34 to 50% on average, Mr. Speaker, and thanks to our plan, Ontario families and small businesses are now paying less on average here than in many similar jurisdictions. And that's real relief for Ontario families, and it's the relief that they can depend on.
Answer.
And it's part of our plan to invest in care and create more opportunity for everyone, Mr. Speaker.
Final supplementary.
Thank you, and back to the Premier. The Millionaires Club that's running Hydro One signed off on a secret $10 million payout should the Hydro One CEO be fired. When did the Premier know?
Thank you. Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Once again, I'll reiterate for the opposition that decisions made regarding executive compensation are made by the board at Hydro One. But the one thing it is important to state, Mr. Speaker, that completely eliminating the CEO's salary at Hydro One would not even take pennies off of people's bills, Mr. Speaker. And it's up to the leader of the opposition, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Ford, to try and explain exactly how his chaotic scheme would work to benefit ratepayers. The opposition know very well that Hydro One's rates are set by the Ontario Energy Board, the independent Ontario Energy Board, not Hydro One's CEO. But compare Mr. Ford's chaotic scheme to our Fair Hydro plan, Mr. Speaker, which has lowered bills by 25% on averages for families. As many as 500,000 small businesses and farms have also seen that reduction, Mr. Speaker.
Answer.
Low-income families, they've also seen a 40 to 50% reduction if they live in rural areas, Mr. Speaker. We continue to move forward in making our bills affordable for the people of this province.